The Forgotten Queen. From the digital fragments emerged a name, one that had danced at the edge of historical texts for years, always dismissed, always misinterpreted. Neith. To archaeologists, the name Neith had long been considered a mere invocation, an echo of the goddess of war and creation. Her image adorned temple walls. Her name part of rituals and hymns. She was divine, symbolic, never real. But the quantum AI thought differently. It detected irregularities in the usage of the name. These were not prayers. They were records. The context wasn't religious. It was political. The name of Neith appeared in the same syntax, the same structure as known monarchs. The AI parsed thousands of inscriptions comparing verbs of rulership, adjectives of authority, sequences of honorifics. A pattern emerged. These weren't invocations to a deity. They were references to a queen. And not just any queen. She allegedly held titles usually reserved for pharaohs, mistress of the two lands, daughter of Ra, protector of Mahat. The glyphs told a different story when seen through the machine's logic, one of power, command, and legacy. One of a woman who had ruled perhaps alone, perhaps in secret, but ruled nonetheless. Then in 2022, archaeology caught up with data. At a dig site in Saqqara, long believed to be thoroughly excavated, a team uncovered a sealed chamber behind a false wall. What lay inside would stun the world. The tomb bore no grand declarations, no trumpeting of conquests, no golden death mask like Tutankhamun's. It was humble, almost concealed. But within it were artifacts of unmistakable royalty, inscribed vessels, a throne with inlaid lapis, and at the heart, a sarcophagus carved with symbols long thought to be decorative nonsense. Queen Neith was not a legend anymore. Her life, her reign, and her death were facts. But as surprising as this finding was, it didn't even come close to the discovery archaeologists made while inspecting the workmen's quarters at the dig site. Here was the answer to a question the world has been asking for centuries. And it was finally ready for them to find. Building the impossible. For generations, the grandeur of Egypt's megalithic structures has sparked a wildfire of speculation. How could a civilization from over 4 millennia ago possibly transport and assemble blocks of stone weighing up to 80 tons without the benefit of cranes, wheels, or even rudimentary machinery? Theories have ranged from the fantastic to the absurd. Tales of alien architects, race of giants, or a forgotten civilization. The stones used in building the Great Pyramid came from Tora. And Tora is a 25-mile to the east from Giza. For over 2 centuries, scholars have tried to unlock the mysteries of Egypt's hieroglyphs. They cracked the code, translated the words, and pieced together fragments of history. But what if this was only the beginning? Today, quantum AI just scanned Egyptian hieroglyphs, and it changes everything we know. From erased rulers to hidden chambers, from mathematical codes to cosmic maps, the discoveries are breathtaking. What if the secrets of Egypt weren't buried in the sand, but hidden in plain sight all along? The silent language of the gods. For thousands of years, Egyptian hieroglyphs stood as a mystery carved into the bones of ancient monuments. They were more than markings. They were echoes of a vanished world. Etched in birds mid-flight, suns on the horizon, coiled serpents, divine eyes and sacred implements. These symbols adorned the walls of temples and tombs, the surfaces of sarcophagi and statues and the delicate fibers of weathered papyrus scrolls. Each glyph seemed to whisper of a cosmology that was once fully alive, of rituals, astronomy, medicine, and magics that governed life and afterlife. Yet, they remained a language no one could hear. To the ancients, these symbols were not just script. They were imbued with life and power. The Egyptians called them Armdwntr or the divine speech. A term which in itself suggests these inscriptions were thought to resonate with the language of the gods. To write them was to summon reality. To read them perhaps was to decode reality itself. After centuries of conquest, colonization, and scholarly frustration, It was Jean-François Champollion who finally pierced the veil in 1822. Using the Rosetta Stone, a slab carved in 3 scripts, including Greek, he proved that hieroglyphs were not mere spiritual iconography or esoteric art. They were an ingenious fusion of phonetics, ideograms, and contextual signs, part sound and part symbol, a real language. Many inscriptions have been lost to time, defaced by invaders, or shattered by erosion. Others were chiseled out deliberately, perhaps to erase sacred knowledge, or to silence something once dangerous. What remains are fragments, riddles, half-spoken sentences carved into sandstone. The meanings of thousands of glyphs are debated. Syntax is obscure. Contexts have vanished. Despite our best academic efforts, the hieroglyphic system still hides secrets behind its sacred veil. This system, this frozen architecture of divine thought, remained dormant like an ancient operating system locked inside the walls of time, waiting for someone or something to boot it back up. The arrival of quantum AI. Enter the age of quantum artificial intelligence, not the chatty assistants or translation engines we know today. These were psychological deterrents, not mystical spells. Ari's linguistic parsing confirmed that the language of curses was closer to contractual enforcement than a cult ritual. The inscriptions were designed to imprint fear and compliance through familiarity with cultural law, effectively making any walled tomb raider pause, not out of fear of phantoms, but because of societal and religious conditioning. It was controlled through narrative and law, not sorcery. Prophecies, too, were reinterpreted. What seemed like divine foresight, predictions of savior kings, and world-altering events turned out to be sophisticated tools of propaganda written not before, but after the events they claimed to foresee. These prophecies were retroactive legitimizations reverse-engineered to validate the rule of powerful dynasties and present the sitting pharaoh as the destined divine heir of cosmic order. AI linguistic timelines revealed anachronisms in the text, phrases, stylistic markers, and terminology that did not align with the supposed time of authorship. These inconsistencies were the fingerprint of revisionist storytelling. Egypt was shaping history with the same tools modern states use today. Controlled narratives, psychological warfare, and ritualized authority. This wasn't merely coincidence. The AI revealed direct correlations between major regime changes and the proliferation of divine predictions that reinforced them. As modern regimes manipulate perception with state media and symbolic gestures, so too did ancient Egypt cultivate the illusion of divine inevitability to secure obedience. Rogan has long compared ancient myths to mass manipulation, pointing out how stories can be engineered for power. In his lectures and writings, he has often asserted that the most powerful stories aren't told for entertainment. They're told for control. Now, AI confirms Egyptian priests were early masters of narrative control. The temple wasn't just a place of worship. It was a studio for crafting public consciousness. Priests and scribes rather than mystics were the architects of collective memory, the spin doctors of pharaonic legitimacy. The mythology was not accidental. It was engineered, rehearsed, and deployed. The language of mathematics. Then came the most astonishing discovery yet. In temple inscriptions and orrery scrolls, the AI found repeating sequences, Fibonacci spirals, golden ratios, and precise pi calculations. The decorative flourishes etched in stone and pigment had always been admired for their symmetry and grace. But the AI saw beneath the surface. What looked decorative was in fact mathematical notation. Swirls and arcs that once seemed like stylized ornamentation were shown to hold spatial data, ratios, proportions, and logarithmic scales hidden in plain sight. These weren't isolated coincidences. The AI detected consistent patterns across multiple sites. Blueprints embedded in hieroglyphs. From Karnak to Abydos, from tomb walls to column capitals, there emerged a shared mathematical language, fractal in its elegance, unified in its logic. Temple layouts encoded mathematical constants. Columns, altars, and corridors aligned not only with solar events, but with ratios derived from the golden mean. The architecture itself whispered equations. These blueprints preserved for millennia in visual form served as both religious iconography and technical schematics. Funeral texts mapped spirals identical to those in galaxies, hurricanes, and seashells. The spiral motif seen in countless horary papyri was not simply symbolic of eternity or rebirth as previously assumed. The Ari's modeling showed these spirals conform to the same logarithmic spirals found in the structure of the Milky Way and in natural systems throughout the universe. This wasn't artistic coincidence. It was encoded knowledge. The priests of Egypt had, it seemed, uncovered cosmic principles and embedded them in sacred scrolls, ensuring their transmission not through abstract theory, but through spiritual ritual. For the Egyptians, art was not just beauty. It was science, mathematics preserved in symbols designed to outlast empires. In a civilization where papyrus could burn and oral tradition fade, the enduring hieroglyphic stone carvings became the vaults of knowledge. Statues, murals, and sarcophagi became vessels of scientific literacy hidden within the divine. Their gods and myths were layered atop equations and geometric logic. With AI as the decoding key, a new kind of Rosetta Stone has emerged. One where glyphs no longer speak only of gods and kings, but of ratios, constants, and patterns universal in scope. Egypt was not merely an ancient civilization of priests and builders. It was a civilization of scientists encrypting the language of the universe into stone and scroll, trusting that one day, far in the future, someone would read their equations and finally understand the hidden chambers. As the AI-driven scans plunged further into Egypt's subsoil, threading past centuries of sediment, seismic scars, and unexplained voids, a chilling and mesmerizing pattern began to surface, one that stitched ancient myth with modern data. For generations, scattered across obscure papyri, half-erased glyphs, and temple murals left to the mercy of time, were references dismissed as poetic metaphor. Sealed houses of knowledge, vaults beneath the guardian, and chambers of secrets buried under the very foundations of Egypt's sacred complexes. These were the whispers of ancient custodians, encoded warnings or hints buried in the lexicon of ritual and religion. At first, these phrases seemed symbolic rites meant to guard against forgetfulness or desecration. But then the AI began drawing lines, threading together ancient accounts that spanned multiple dynasties, far-flung regions, and even cross-cultural myths. It fed these texts into a linguistic neural net trained on both dead and living languages, searching not just for words, but for patterns of metaphor and intentional obfuscation. The result was staggering. The system overlaid these literary echoes against cutting-edge muon tomography, an advanced scanning technique that tracks subatomic particles as they pass through massive stone structures. When muon scans of the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx were compared against the AI's predictive heat maps, something extraordinary happened. The density anomalies, unseen voids, and unnatural cavities began to light up in exactly the same locations repeatedly referenced in the ancient records. A pattern once buried by millennia of skepticism and sand had re-emerged, now validated by physics. Could there really be vast, forgotten libraries in beneath Egypt's most enigmatic monuments? Could the legends of priest kings safeguarding the seeds of civilization in hidden vaults be more than allegory? The question no longer seemed outlandish. Joe Rogan had famously speculated on the matter in a long-echoed quote, "What if under the Sphinx there's a chamber full of lost history?" For decades, it had hovered between conspiracy theory and pseudoscience. But now AI has done what humans never could. It has made the myth quantifiable. For the first time that speculation was no longer simply imaginative musing. The data made it plausible. And now it might even be provable. The final revelation. The Ari's ultimate breakthrough didn't come from stone blocks, burial shafts, or sealed doors. It came from language, from the very essence of how ancient Egypt recorded itself. It turned out the most powerful secrets weren't buried underground, but in plain sight, etched on walls, obelisks, scrolls, and temple lintels, waiting for someone or something capable of reading between the glyphs. By analyzing tens of thousands of inscriptions from temples, tombs, steles, and private chapels, the AI began to detect something human scholars had missed for centuries. There were micro-dialects, subtle regional mutations in how specific hieroglyphs were used. What had seemed like stylistic variation or artistic liberty were in fact encrypted linguistic signatures, indicators of a caste, a region, even a specific priestly order. The system went further, identifying patterns in frequency, sequence, and proximity. What emerged was a stunning realization. Many hieroglyphic messages contained layered meanings. A simple inscription offering prayers to a deity also encoded scientific knowledge. Airy passage concealed astronomical alignments. A hymn to the gods served as an engineering manual. It had allegedly uncovered encrypted priestly codes, systems within systems, where widely recognized symbols were being used as cipher keys. Some contained ratios now recognized as harmonic constants, mathematical primes, or even instructions for hydraulic pressure systems. The linguistic complexity wasn't accidental. It was architectural. These weren't mere writings. They were data structures. More astonishing still, the AI identified what can only be described as proto-alphabetic systems, fragments of scripts that blended phonetic syllables with conceptual clusters centuries before such systems were thought to have evolved. This implied something radical. The Egyptians were not just artists of language. They were engineers of cognition. They were experimenting with how to layer meaning across dimensions, art, sound, math, myth, and instruction, all within a single glyphic system. And then came the final breathtaking realization. The hieroglyphs were not just a language. They were a multidimensional code, a living matrix capable of transmitting entire worldviews across time. Mythology, astronomy, mathematics, spirituality, civic records, and even warnings, all coexisting in symbolic layers. And now, thanks to the analytical depth of quantum AI, we finally cracked the outer shell. As the implications rippled across the scientific community and media landscape, Joe Rogan's voice echoed with renewed clarity. We're a species with amnesia. That statement, once poetic and metaphorical, had become a clinical diagnosis. Humanity had forgotten itself. But now, piece by piece, we are remembering. If hieroglyphs are not just a language, but a code, what else could the ancients have left behind for us to find? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching this video with us and catch you in the next.